Welcome back to Facebook Live. It's been a little while, but it's great to be back. And today we've got a really, really good guest for you. Many of you will remember having BALPA, the Airline Pilots Association, on in the past to talk about what it's like being a pilot, the challenges of being a pilot during COVID at the time. It was Wendy Percy. Today we have Amy Levisage, who is the first woman ever to be the General Secretary in the 86-year history of BALPA. Amy, welcome. You're also managing to fit this in, being a mum of two, 3 years now in post. I can't believe it. I remember talking to you when you first came along and started. You've got a good history, the trade union movement, the RCM, the First Division Association as well. So it's been 3 years, but congratulations on those 3 years. Tell us, how are you finding it? I'll also chuck in a first question. We had one from Miranda Kajuna who said, delighted to hear Amy's going to be on. I was wondering what her view is of the fact that she represents pilots when only 6% of pilots are women. So, welcome, Amy. How are you finding it? And what do you think of Miranda's question?
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here today, and I am so grateful for the opportunity to come and join you. You know, we're great friends of back Heathrow and all the fabulous work that you've done. You're a powerhouse in championing our wonderful aviation industry, and we need those voices, and we need those really strong voices saying how fantastic the industry is, and how proud we should be as the UK of what this brings to all of us, no matter where in the country that you are. So it's fantastic to be there. It's actually I've been General Secretary now. It's actually 2 years.
2 years.
That I've been here,
Researcher.
although it does feel like
Being
a few more. There has been busy. It's I mean I think back to the day that I found out that I did have the nomination, that the National Executive Council had given me their nomination to be General Secretary, and the pride I felt then is exactly the same as the pride that I felt when I woke up this morning, ready to think, right, what's my day ahead today. It's incredible. It's an incredible honour to have any group of trade union members put their faith in you, and particularly a group, you know, BALPA's got such a prestigious and long history. It's founded on the principle of making every flight a safe flight. It's such a, you know, it's so fantastic to not just be a trade union, be a professional body and have such a fantastic mission behind us. So, you know, I feel immensely proud. I feel immensely proud of the work that my members do every single day. So it's you know, it's such a privilege, and there's such a great bunch, and it's a great industry, and there's
You're a
never a
great
dull
role model.
moment.
You're a great role model, Amy, as well, for particularly women in the industry, the trade union movement, but also amongst pilots as well. And I know one of your passions has been about making it a more diverse career. And here we are. I mean, your offices are down in the road from where ours are. We're in the London Borough of Hounslow. You're in Hillingdon, very, very close to the airport, but a very, very diverse area. You got Slough, Ealing, Hillingdon, Hounslow, all of these communities. And we get a lot of letters, and you'll get correspondence as well from people who would like to be pilots and live in the local communities. But it's hard, isn't it? It costs about £100,000, and I know that's something you've been looking at. And how is that going? Are you able to get any movement in terms of making it easier in terms of the pathway and the kind of people they get in touch with are saying, I'd love to get into that career, but maybe it's not for me. Maybe it's for better off people, people living in leafier areas, because we do want a diverse workforce here, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, it is heartbreaking when you hear stories of people who have the talent the skills, the strengths, the resilience, and the enthusiasm for aviation. They've got everything that you need, but they have this barrier in front of them of trying to raise over £100,000 entirely privately to pay for their funding. There are routes to try and get into the profession, but it's really difficult. There's, so occasionally some of the employers, some of the big airlines will run schemes, which are great, but it's few and far between. And it's really difficult to understand, particularly if you don't have an aviation background, how to get into this wonderful profession. And it's a fundamental right. It's a fundamental sort of point of principle, isn't it? It goes back to basics, that anyone with the skills and the talent and the drive to be able to be a pilot, who would make a fantastic pilot, should have the opportunity. We're in 2026. We should have, UK, we should have those opportunities available to anyone, no matter what your background is. And you should be able to have, not just be able to enter into the profession, but also have a fantastic career in the profession as well. We're doing a lot of work at the moment about trying to bring together a broad coalition of people to discuss the issue of what could the solutions be like, what could the solutions be to this funding issue? How can we take that barrier down so that we can have those aspiring pilots concentrating on the training? Because the training is it's tough, as you would expect, as any entering into any profession is. There's lots of learning to be done, lots of resilience and hard work and all of those kind of things. Well, we want our aspiring pilots to be focused on that and being the best pilot they can be, not worried about, my mum and dad have just remortgaged their house, what if, and having all of those things in their heads. So we're trying to bring together a broad coalition amongst our airlines, amongst the airports, amongst all our wonderful campaigning groups that we've got within the aviation industry, and with government, to try and say, look, here's an issue, can't be beyond the wit of man to solve this problem. We don't have this with any other profession where people are having, doctors, their mums and dads aren't having to remortgage their house so they can afford to pay for the training. Let's try to get together and find a good solution that works for our industry. And you know what, Parmjit, about 4 months ago, we were getting, when the minister would be asked in Parliament about this issue, there wasn't, it was kind of saying, well, this is really like the airlines' responsibility to recruit the pilots and to bring people in. Now, just after having some of those initial conversations and keeping up the momentum, we've got to the point where actually the minister's gone, oh no, yes, we want to make the most of our airport expansion. We need to really capitalise on how much the aviation industry brings to the UK. This is something that should be a priority for us, and this is something that it's not a case of public money being spent on this. This is just a case of like, let's unlock some bureaucracy, let's lift up some barriers and pull some levers to make something happen. So we're getting a lot of enthusiasm to do something about this. I'm really positive that if we can get the right people around the table, that wisdom of crowds, we can find a good solution that fits our industry.
Yeah, well, that's really good to know that you're starting to make some progress, because I know there's something you've been pushing on for a little while. We've had questions from numerous people about this. Thank you to Andrew Dakers of West London Business got in touch. He said that the University of Middlesex University, is it, or is it West London University? I've got it down here somewhere. Sorry, Miles, it's University of West London actually does a degree course which involves a couple of years of actually experience, both in I think in Gloucestershire and in Bournemouth. But it still does involve that £100,000 plus 3 years actually of tuition fees of £9,000 a year. So Getting that change sounds like a really valuable and important target, and it's good that you're working on it. And it's, I'm sure, something I'm sure that we will stay in touch with over time as well. Thank you to everybody joining us on the feed, to Kitty, to John, to Jeff, and others as well. Do feel free to send in your questions on the feed, as well as the pile I've got here in front of me as well. We've also had a question actually from someone called Sally Hopkins from Richmond. And this also ties in, I think, with another one of your campaigns around two pilots or one. Sally says, I understand some airlines are thinking of doing away with the second pilot. Are two pilots always necessary on flights, especially on internal flights? And in an AI world, could we end up with no pilots at all? So, what's the job security for pilots in that? I think I can imagine what your answer is to this one, but I'm sure our viewers would all love to hear it coming from you.
Yeah, so I mean, we call it reduced crew operations, has kind of been a sort of looming idea. Interestingly, none of the airlines are really picking up on it. Really, I think it's more of a manufacturer's. Some of the plane manufacturers are more interested in this idea, and I've sort of described this as one of those things where people are getting excited. I guess the tech people who work in those companies are getting excited and thinking, can we do this? And they're not really thinking, should we do this? And the answer from BALPA and every single pilots union in the world is that safety starts with two. The way that pilots work on the flight deck, and they have at least two pilots on each flight. Sometimes, if you're going very long distances, you might have three or even more pilots on board, to allow pilots to have their break and things like that, to make sure that they are alert and ready to go while they're working. They work together. They work together as a team. That's how they fly the aircraft. They check back with each other. You never get that confirmation bias and things like that. So it's a really collaborative way that they fly the aircraft, and it's essential for safety. With that, to go down the route of having a reduced cooperation, it wouldn't in any way enhance safety. And what we always say, and what the philosophy of safety is in across the world, is that if there are any changes to be made, they should always be there to enhance safety, not just to make it as safe. So what we would be looking for is all of these wonderful technological developments, and we are in a rapidly changing world. How can those technological developments aid the decision makings by the two pilots on board? Like, how can we enhance safety rather than attempting to just maintain the level and doing things that you shouldn't really do? I mean, there's nothing really to be gained by doing that at all. There's no reason why you would do that.
Isn't that why these ideas are being floated by some? I can't imagine any other reason. We've all watched disaster movies, haven't we, where passengers have been called upon, going back to the days of airplane, I suppose, to fly the plane. And nobody wants to be in that kind of scenario. So why would you, on a major airline on a big flight, expect to have just one pilot?
Exactly. This is a solution to no one's problem. This is, like I said, I don't think anyone would think that there was anything to gain by this. I mean, fortunately, like I say, the airlines seem to be absolutely on board with that, and saying no, there's no way we would ever want to go down that route, because it's fundamental to safety that you have two pilots on, that you have at least two pilots on board, and that's part of their role. It is so skilled, the work that they do, and I'm inspired every day when I speak to pilots about how they work and the things that they have to deal with on the flight deck. And that is where you want somebody, two people on board on that flight deck who are informed by sometimes decades of experience. You want that experience on board.
Yeah. Yeah, just got a live question just come in from Jenny from Hammersmith, who wants to know how would pilot training have to change if supersonic aircraft make a comeback? I don't know whether she knows something that we don't. Uh, is I suppose, I mean, technology changes all the time, doesn't it? Does that mean that your members have to go back and go for wholesale retraining when new developments come along, or is it just like in other careers, it's a lifelong training thing, and you just move with the times and get a top up?
And pilots are training and continually learning all the time. So they have to go into the simulators and do all their checks and do all of those things. If they want to move on to a different type of aircraft, they have to actually do all the exams and the training to fly those aircraft. So if it was, a return of Concorde, or Concorde Mark II or something like that, then I'm sure that they would have to learn to fly that aircraft and do that. I'm sure I've got many members that would love to say, "Oh gosh, I'd love to have the chance to fly that." There's so much passion in aviation for all sorts of different models. So many of my members aren't just commercial airline pilots; they'll also have like their own planes and
Yeah.
gliders and all sorts of things like this. So there's passion across the board. So I'm sure that would, if there was a return to have a sort of Concorde thing, I'm sure that would spark a whole lot of enthusiasm across. You'd probably
Everybody
be
would
happy to itching to,
want
to
to get
do
their
the
hands on
type
the control
rating
of
for
that.
the aircraft.
Now, you were talking about safety a moment ago. We had an interesting question from Ravina in Hounslow. We've got a very, very diverse community here around the airport. And I suppose this is partly based on what happened quite tragically in the Air India flight leaving, I can't remember which airport in India it was, but it was last year, wasn't it? And she said, when I fly, I often see pilots when I enter the aircraft, but think little of them until I land. What steps does BALPA take to ensure its members get regular health checks, especially for mental health problems, as around 25% of workers suffer from some form of mental health problems during their working life? And that, I'm sure that's true. And if you're in an office, you need a level of support or any other career. But in these such focused roles where you have such responsibility and such responsibility for so many people that you're carrying around the globe, is this something that the union are actively engaged with in terms of looking after the physical and the mental health of pilots?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really important with any incident that we always say this, that we don't speculate on the causes or what the potential causes are of any incident until the air accident report has come out. The reason for that is you want to allow the investigators the space and the freedom and the clear-headedness to be able to actually look at what has happened, so we can learn lessons. And we operate a just culture in aviation and a learning culture in aviation, and that is why the industry is so safe. And very fortunately, these incidents are rare. Talking about the point, not in reference to any particular incidents that have happened, we do a lot of work, as do the airlines, around supporting our members through any sort of health condition, be that mental health, physical health, or anything in between. We do that through BALPA. We actually have a pilot advice and support group, which is a really good community, so that people, if they're having any sort of issues, that they can just call up and chat away. So we sort of do that as ourselves, as our own networks within the union. Lots of other unions do that too. It's being a member of a union is not just you don't just have somebody like negotiating your pay or there if you get into a bit of bother. You're part of a community, and that's what we really want to foster. So we have that. The airlines have all sorts of work that goes on, and medical checks and all of those things are very, there are very strict rules and regulations around making sure that pilots are fit and well, and that they are doing that. And pilots are very good. It's a very good community. It's a really good supportive community, and that's what you want. It's a small world, isn't it? And you say that it's like that in every single industry. It becomes quite a small world, and lots of people know each other, and you do have that really sense of community. You'd have had that palmed it in politics. It's a small world. The trade union movement is a small world, and it's like that in pilots. So we do a lot of work on that, and as do every employer. And that's right, that we support people. People are people, aren't they? You have different problems and health things throughout your lifetime, and you support people to move past them. If somebody has, say, an illness or something like that, or anything, and they can't quite do work for a bit, they take the time off, and then they come back and they're supported in their return to work.
I think you made that point very well. And also, trade unions historically have always been at the forefront of health in the workplace. So
Yeah.
it's crucial, and quite right as well what you said about we don't know until the investigation is complete in terms of what happened. There may have been lots of media speculation, but we don't know. And the right thing and appropriate thing is to wait and find out, because one of the things that the industry does very well is investigating in detail, and it has to when things rare tragedies like that happen, but when they do happen. And you mentioned quite rightly, it is a small world. And one of the things that is making it smaller is growth in aviation, something obviously important to you. And you've been very, very supportive. BALPA has been one of the trade unions that has been at the forefront of the campaign for expansion for as long as I can remember in my involvement about Heathrow. Your name has always been prominent on our banners, whether we've been, outside court hearings or campaigning in local communities, and we're really, really very grateful for that. And one of the remarks that we've had, it's rather than a question, is there's been a thank you actually. Quite a few people have said, "Can you thank BALPA for their support for expansion?" But I suppose the obvious question is, in terms of benefits for BALPA, have you been able to quantify at all what will be the benefits to yourselves of a third runway at Heathrow Airport as the airport continues to grow? Obviously, we can see real benefits in terms of jobs across the country, but I imagine that's probably one of the big things for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think so. I think there's two things. I mean, at the moment we are, this is one of the key arguments that we're making to politicians and decision makers about why we really need to get ahead of doing something about the funding for pilot training and making that a fairer system, because we need to. We will hopefully have a bigger demand in the future, and this is a massive investment in the UK, in ourselves, and it's fantastic. And it's not just in Heathrow. Obviously, we've also got announcements around other airports expanding, and other really important advancements in our industry around airspace modernisation and things like that, which are really going to make a big difference. And one of the key arguments that we're trying to make to decision makers is that you want to get the most out of that. You want to maximise the benefits to the UK, and in the expansions of the different airports, which is fantastic. We'll get a lot of construction jobs, and we'll kind of have this big sugar rush of a boost to the economy. But what we want to do as well is think about what's the long-term gain to the economy. How do we have people more coming into pilots? That's long-term careers, air traffic control, engineering, working for the plane manufacturers, doing all of the wonderful jobs that are associated with our industry. And that's going to be a big boost, a big boost to the economy overall. So this is what we're trying to push there. I think one of the other one of the really other important things that I think these announcements have brought to us around expansion of Heathrow and the expansion, across the board in other airports, are that it's so fantastic to hear politicians and decision makers speaking up for our industry and talking proudly about what the aviation industry brings in terms of money into the UK, but what it brings in terms of, uniting families and allowing us to go on our lovely holidays and uniting businesses and bringing business into the UK. It's a force for good. It's a force for good. We're an island nation, and it is a positive statement around giving us a future that's a really optimistic future and a really optimistic vision for the future of growth, and one that's that is not kind of, it does feel, that we're kind of politically in sometimes in uncertain times, and it kind of feels you can feel quite pessimistic and, kind of, all things are bad. But with these kind of announcements, we can really look to like an optimistic vision and say, like, these are our brightest days, we're ahead of us, and like look at all the things that we can do together when we work together. So I think it's for me, I think there's the boost, and obviously we hope that this will create more demand and more pilots coming into a wonderful profession, and that's fantastic. But it's also the feeling that the aviation industry is a force for good for our country, and it's a really positive statement of that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned growth. I mean, it's something like £12 billion of growth for our country at 0.5% to
Huge.
which is colossal at a time where growth and productivity has been a challenge,
Yes.
and the sheer number of jobs and apprenticeships keep coming up. The inbox has been full. More apprenticeships, please. Yes, love that talk. Great. More of that. A couple of little questions as well that have come in into the inbox. One is from Gail in Putney. How hard is it to train as a pilot in later life? That's a very good one. At the other end of the scale, back to Kitty, has asked, for school leavers, how long does training and qualifying take? So at both ends of the spectrum, I suppose. I mean, you may not have those answers with you now, but is there anything that you can say to Kitty and to Gail?
So we actually yesterday had a fantastic sort of roundtable event at BALPA that we hosted from the British Women's Pilots Association, which are a fantastic organisation. And they had a number of delegates there, and it was almost this question, because we had one of their members who was only 16 and trying to get into the industry, and we also had somebody who trained later in life, and we had all manner of different routes in to the industry. So it's like, literally, that was what we were discussing yesterday, is, you can go from being 16 and having this absolute passion for being aviation, and I kind of said, oh my gosh, if I was that driven at 16, I can't imagine. And then also going, actually, there's different routes in, and we all have sometimes a bit of a meandering path, and we find our passion later in life, and there should be those routes in. I mean, for BALPA, there's lots of information on our website around the different types of routes in and the different ways through. But for us, it's always about, no matter whether you're 16 or 50 and you're thinking about a changing career, that opportunity should be available to you if you have the strength, the resilience, the skills and the talent to be a pilot. You should be able to find your way into our wonderful profession. And I mean, pilot training, like training for any profession, is, of course, it's hard, and it does need dedication, and you really do need your resilience. But if you've got the passion and the drive to do it, it's also the most wonderful supportive community to come into, and that there will be always people that will help you. And BALPA is one of those organisations where, we have a thriving networks to help support and give people advice.
Amy, I can't believe that we're coming to our half hour already, but there are a couple of other little things to cover. But I mean, that is really good to know. And for all of those people that have got in touch with us over the years, keep doing it. But
Yeah.
Amy's a fantastic champion for careers in aviation. And if you want to be a pilot, if you're young, if you're older, don't give up on it. It's not like a few years ago when Wendy had to come on and say, "Don't apply, don't do it." It's very, very expensive, and there just aren't the jobs at the minute. We're now, opening up 30 new destinations with expansion at Heathrow, lots of additional flights, lots of additional opportunities, and real opportunities. There's always a left field question.
Go
So,
on.
and one has come in. It's from Andy from Isleworth. So, brace yourself for this one. Now, here's one to think on your feet. Um, we're competing a little bit with PMQs on some other channel somewhere on the BBC at the moment. And Andy said, if you had drawn lots and you were top of the list of Prime Minister's questions today, Amy, what would your question be?
My goodness me.
That's a tough one, isn't it? I'll
That's a
let
really tough one because I've now got to suddenly split my brain into what would Amy ask and what would the General Secretary of BALPA ask.
yeah.
So I will stick to the
What's she going to do? Is
I
she
would
going to
I would stick with my
say?
professional.
Is
I
she
would
going to be
keep my
controversial?
professional my hat on and say I think what I would want to say is we really do now need to focus on growth, Prime Minister. In your leadership speech at conference, you spoke about gold-plated gold standard apprenticeships. It's Apprenticeships Week this week. What are we doing to open up apprenticeships across the board and allow access to all manner of different professions like being a pilot, and how can we tweak and change the system so that no matter what your background, as long as you've got the talent to go into a profession, you've got a fantastic profession to go into that contributes to the growth of the economy, society, and that we feel like we are growing as a country. And so that would be the question that I would ask. That was more of a comment than a question, but I would turn that into a question if I was actually at PMQs.
You've been full square behind us and our campaign, and we'll be full square behind you and yours. It's been a real pleasure, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And we'll have you on again, I dare say, and see how this is
Hope
progressing
so.
as the career opens up and new pathways, apprenticeships, however you end up getting them there. And there's all kind of creative ways. And I would urge our supporters, and we will encourage them to do so, to keep an eye on things on your website as well. And if this is the career for you, then follow your dreams and pursue it. In terms of following our dreams and what we're pursuing next, we will be back with another Facebook Live on Thursday, the 5th of March at 12 o'clock, where our guest will be Lord David Blunkett, who is very, very involved in the economic task force. He chairs it for Heathrow, and that really is building on Amy's theme today about building on careers, jobs, opportunities, and investment in the boroughs around Heathrow Airport with expansion. So we look forward to that. Other than that, it's still a kind of midweek, isn't it? We're used to doing these on a Friday. I looked to miles on my left, but it's still midweek. So we'll ask you to enjoy the rest of the working week or whatever you're doing. Thanks again to Amy, and we look forward to seeing you on March the 5th.